Hi everyone, and you are welcome to Type Conversion Special Methods lecture. In the beginning, I want to ask you a question. Assume that you have a variable a, and this variable has the value 3.14, which is a float value. Then you decide to convert this variable into integer, so all what you have to do is using integer function, as you can see here. Actually, this conversion is possible because Python knows how we can convert a float variable into integer. But now let's say, what if you have an object of your class and you want to convert this object into integer? What will happen if you try something like this in Python? Actually, you will get an exception. Why this? Because Python doesn't know how to convert your object into integer. So, in order to learn how to make your class objects convertible into other data types, join me in this lecture. In this lecture, I will start by defining what type conversion special methods are. Then, we will see the available type conversion special methods. After that, we will learn how we can override these methods, and I will end up this lecture by a quick summary. So let's get started. So, what are type conversion special methods? Simply, these methods are the methods that get called when we want to convert our object type from one type into another. Examples about these methods are $integer, $float, etc. And if I want to reformulate this definition, I can say simply these methods will define how your object is gonna be converted into the required data type. Now let's see some available methods under this category. As you see in this table, I'm showing three methods: integer, float, complex. All of these methods have the same definition, but the only difference is the type that this method represents. So as we see here, $integer define the behavior when the function integer is get called with an object from your class. $float method define the behavior when the function float is called with an object of your class. And $complex will define the behavior for the complex function. And because these methods convert your object into another data type, these methods must return a value. And the data type of this value depends on the method itself. So for example, $integer should return integer value, and $float should return float value. In Python, there are other methods below this category. For example, we have oct and hex, and we have also other methods. I will not define all of them because, as I mentioned before, the definition is the same. Now let's move to Jupyter Notebook in order to see some real examples about these methods. Okay, first of all, let's see what will happen when I call integer method, which usually we use to change the object data type into integer for a class object. Let's say that I will use the same example, which is student class, and I'm going to define now an object from this class and using integer function with this object. Alright, so let's say student equal to student John Doe, and this is his age and his CGPA. Now let's say print integer student. Run. I get type error as you see here. Why type error? Because integer argument must be a string, a byte-like object or number, not a student, which means this function support the following data type. So the interpreter doesn't know what to do for this function when an object of type student has been passed. Let's solve this issue right now. How to solve it? I'll take this class and I'll open a new cell and I'll override this integer method. So look here, I will say when I use integer method with an object of this class, convert this object into integer in the following way. Let's say I need to return the age of this student as a representative integer for that object. So now in this example, I choose by myself how I want to define or how I want to convert this object into integer. And now if I run, no error anymore, and I'll get 25. Why? Because when I use now the function integer, beyond the scene, this special method will be called, and the result, which is 25, or the age of this student, will be returned. Now let's see one more example about float method. Again, I'll use exactly the same example, but instead of integer here, I'll say float. If I run, also I'll get another error because float function doesn't support this student object. So when I use this function, the interpreter doesn't know what to do and an exception will be raised. How to solve the issue? It's quite simple. All what I have to do is to override this special method. How to override? We're already familiar with. I have to redefine this $float method. And let's say now in this example, I want the CGPA of the student to be the float number that should be returned when I want to convert this object into float. So I'll say return self.cgpa and I'll print here and run. You will see here that I got 95.5, which is the CGPA of this student. So without overriding this method, I'll get an error. With overriding this method, I decided what I should return when I want to convert this object into float. And that's all. Now let's recap what we have learned so far. In this lecture, mainly we have talked about type conversion special methods, and we have seen that these methods are get called when we want to convert an object from our class into another data type. And as we have seen, there is a one dunder method for each available data type in Python. Now please refer to the challenges available in the lecture resources in order to practice what you have learned. That's all for this lecture. Thank you very much, and if you are available, join me in the next lecture.